Welcome back to an episode of I'm Glad You're Here. Today's guest is Talitha Ferri, who has cultivated and helps guide others in soul expressive singing, or what some may call light language or intuitive singing. It's so hard to put into words, and you'll see that a lot of our conversation is kind of just that, hard to articulate. I'm also having one of the hardest times creating this intro because we talk about such exciting and liberating topics on how to tap into what our soul wants to say and not judging how it sounds and what that mystery really is. I think the best way to really introduce it is to share a piece of what it sounds like. So Talitha so generously allowed us to record this snippet that will kick off our discussion so you can kind of get a flavor of what we're talking about the whole time. After this piece, Talitha will share kind of her story on how she uncovered this for herself and what the process and relationship to this mysterious kind of space of soul expressive singing is. I'm really excited for you to listen to this episode. I had so much fun in this conversation, and I discovered Talitha from listening to her YouTube videos and being so mesmerized by how beautiful this singing is. So I'm going to turn it over to Talitha's song. All right, now let's get on to the episode. Welcome to I'm Glad You're Here. I feel so lucky that I get to interview you today. I found you via YouTube a couple months ago, and I was just blown away. I'd never heard singing the way you sang, the collection of instruments, and to me it was this echo of liberation, and somehow I felt like I understood what you were saying without knowing what you were saying. And I was just so drawn and so curious. So maybe we can start there. What is it that you do? What is this like soul activation singing expression?
Well, I guess I have to start with it's a mystery.
I love that.
To me, it is actually coming into deep, intimate relationship with the mystery that is creation, and that is like woven into us, woven into myself. I think, the way that we are taught to orient to ourselves and to life and our culture is so externalized, and it's also so rooted to what we can know, what we can understand, what we can speak to. And I think there's so much of ourselves that we lose through the experience of childhood, through the experience we have, most of us as children, be kind of conditioned out of that pure state. There's so much of our own mystery that we lose. And I think a lot of us who are on a healing journey, who are on a journey of integration, like part of what we are reintegrating and remembering is just our own mystery, and learning how to be in that, and learning how to like actually rest in it without holding it, right? Because it's not something we can hold and contain and define and show to others. And what I love about, intuitive expression, what some people call light language, is that it invites you into that aspect of yourself that cannot be understood. And that shouldn't necessarily be understood from within an intellectual kind of place, and actually offers a embodied, somatic, full experience of that texture, of that frequency. That is you. That is the mystery, in a way that is so pure and so beyond mind that makes it difficult to talk about. And yet, like you say, it's such a felt texture. And kind of lands in this space that we have in our bodies and our hearts. It's this space that is often not touched, and for many of us has gone untouched for so long. So it's this practice of just like remembering how to be and express from that place that is mystery, that is beyond mind, that is beyond, our intellectual constructs.
Yeah. I love that. I love how the description is it's a mystery. It's more and more unknown. The layers that we dive into ourselves, the more it's that felt experience. I think that was really powerful that you said. That's exactly it. It's a felt experience, whether you're doing that yourself, or when I watch the videos of you, I kind of feel it in me too. It's like this dance that we kind of play. Just witnessing someone else in their full embodiment kind of unlocks you a little bit.
There's definitely a mirroring element to it as well, because it's such pure energy. It just organically kind of awakens and opens those spaces in anyone who is a part of the transmission. And by a part of it, I mean simply listening to it. Those who are open and receptive, it kind of allows for this mirroring, which is such an organic part of our human experience, the way that we mirror within one another. And yeah, it opens up that same space in others, not the identical space, but a space that holds the same texture, and that we can kind of meet on.
That's powerful. I was speaking to a mentor of mine who taught me a lot about sound healing, and we're now just speaking about frequency. And she made this comment, like, when you just can't complete something or can't respond to someone, it's your body's inability to hold that frequency. I thought that was such a potent way of looking at it. Like, it's a frequency that our body's not tuned to, or doesn't want to take on. And so just kind of looking at it simply as frequency and this transmission is, yeah, that felt experience, when things resonate, your body is adjusting to that frequency and also kind of giving out its own frequency in response.
It's a co-creation completely and absolutely. And it's a co-creation that we can sense and trust, but not fully know and understand, because it is a co-creation of such subtle aspects and threads of who we are. And I really truly believe that, if I'm recording a transmission and putting it out on the internet, on YouTube, those who are listening and who are receiving it in resonance, they are part of it in some way, in some form. Not in a way that I need to know or understand, but in a way that I truly trust and feel,
Yeah. Yeah. So can you speak about your journey into this, how you tapped into this vocal activation?
Yeah, so I've always been very vocal and musical. I've sung since I was very young and loved music. I started writing songs when I was around 14, 15, and I actually spent most of high school being a singer-songwriter and playing, different venues and cafes and gigging around. And that was kind of how I first found myself within sound and within music. And for me, it was a deeply healing and cathartic journey. I use songwriting and music as a space to really unearth, my wounding, my pain, my, all of these pieces that were making it difficult for me, right, in my life, and pieces that I saw others holding, and felt that like no one was talking about it and no one was like speaking to it. And so it was actually, it wasn't something I was hyper aware of in that sense, but it was actually a really deep devotional practice of like diving into these shadowed places and creating a song and a story that held the truth of that burden and of that pain, but also like held the beauty of it and the inherent hope of healing that is within all of it. And for me, it was about like sharing that with others and actually inviting them to enter that space with me, inviting them to actually open to that texture that they were holding that might have been reflected in the songs that I was writing. And I'll say like the music I was writing was very sad, very beautiful, but very sad. I have the deepest love and respect and admiration for it. And I still revisit them. And I've gone through like an interesting journey with that too, of like having to distance myself from it because of the heaviness and the sadness, and then actually returning to it again from this whole kind of deeper space of actually recognizing the absolute beauty and healing that lives even in like the most sad and melancholy, tragic stories.
Totally.
And I did that for a while until I left the States and I moved to Denmark, where I was born, and kind of reconnected with my roots there. And as I kind of began my own healing journey, I just began to experience music in ways that I hadn't before in ceremonial settings, and I began to experience music in this way that I've realized my whole life I've been trying to find and couldn't.
Yeah.
And it was just suddenly presented to me, and I understood that this is what I had been looking for with music. I had a very difficult time performing. Even though I'm a quote unquote good performer, the idea of entertaining people was very kind of dissonant for me. And when I realized that there were spaces where you could offer yourself with complete authenticity and vulnerability and pour yourself into the space without it being a performance and without it having to entertain anyone, being able to offer your voice in a way that maybe didn't create entertainment and joy, but actually opened deep spaces of sadness and grief and emotion. It was like, it was like the holy grail for me, and I immediately knew like, okay, I really want to start shifting more deeply into this. And I started, collecting different instruments. I started with singing bowls. I got a shruti box and a shamanic drum. And that's when I started to actually explore my voice, because before it had been story, it had been songwriting. It's actually exploring my human and my ego. And I spent so many years integrating that, actually, of like my human, my ego, all my stories, that then when I was sitting with these bowls and these beautiful, instruments, I realized like, okay, it's actually time to just meet my voice beyond the story, and I just started every single day sitting with sound, just listening to the sound of my voice, not singing any words, not singing any songs, just making sound and mentoring with everything that was held in that sound. And it was around that time that I discovered light language, had no idea what it was, realized that I actually spoke it all the time when I was a child, and most children do. I mean, what we call like kids speaking gibberish very often is what we could call quote unquote light language, right? Which is just intuitive sound, soul sound that is not oriented to the intellectual mind or to linear language. It's non-linear soul language and expression. And I just started playing with it and kind of realized that it was just like available to me. And that kind of started this journey of expressing myself that way, which was the most vulnerable part of the journey, right? Being so used to like, oh, I can write a song and I can get on stage, perform it, and everyone will tell me how beautiful my voice is, how beautiful the song is. And I can like, that kind of ego level, but then having to start sharing the most vulnerable part of my expression. This part of me that I knew many people wouldn't even understand, that
Yeah.
many people who had, deeply celebrated my previous expression would actually pull away from. And I did experience that as well, going from being the girl who writes songs to like now the girl who like is like singing in gibberish and like doing all this weird stuff and
Right.
like allowing that ego death as well, allowing myself to take off that coat and that, that layer as well. And yeah, it was profoundly healing because it really brought me home to myself, and I began to understand myself through my voice, through pure sound, through pure frequency, and the infinite potentiality of that frequency. Yeah, and since then, I've just been deepening in that, and I guess really integrating and embodying it, essentially, learning how to fully embody and hold those codes, so to speak. And yeah, started holding spaces for others to unearth that within themselves, which has like been an absolute honor, to witness
Yeah.
others move through that and to witness how organic and natural this is for all of us when we're given permission to just be there, essentially.
Wow. Yeah. There's so much. First of all, I'm just sitting in admiration. I was going to say standing, but I'm sitting in admiration of that story, the perseverance it takes, the dedication. I can just imagine how uncomfortable those initial stages are and just getting in touch with that, letting go of your saying of all the layers of the ego, of the praise, of the performance, and just getting in touch with yourself. It feels like a baby that's crawling and like knows it's gonna walk and stand, but in the in between, it's just so awkward. And so that process sounds really, I mean, again, then it's so powerful because now you're guiding others and you're standing so fully in your embodiment. But that is a journey. Going back to the idea of singing and performing, now when you record or you sit down, is it something that just streams like a stream of consciousness when you hit record? Everything is new, or is it something you practice and prepare
Mhm.
for?
I think in the beginning, it was definitely much more prepared for, when I first started a YouTube channel and, put those expressions out there, it was so new and tender and just unknown. But ultimately, the nature of this kind of expression is that you can't really practice it. I mean, you can
Mhm.
practice holding it and expressing it, but you actually can't practice, if I'm to sit down and record a transmission, I can't practice the transmission
Yeah.
for it. I can, open the space in my body and my voice and kind of warm up, so to speak. And I'll do that sometimes giving myself space to attune to what it is I'm bringing through. I used to do that much more in the beginning. Actually, it would, prepare the vessel, so to speak, and attune and really open up the channel before hitting record or sharing a transmission. And that's how it is for most of us. It takes time for us to learn to attune, but over time, that attunement becomes automatic. And so
Yeah.
what used to be maybe a 20-minute meditation to open and some toning to really like create space in the channel then becomes just like an instantaneous, like, it's like a muscle
It's
memory,
a
for
muscle.
lack of
I
a
was
better
just
word. We
thinking.
we just we just kind of learn to go there. So it's
Mhm.
also just cultivating a relationship with the part of yourself that is that and is always there. And it's also just like mending of these stories we have of like, I'm not that. I have to learn it. I'm separate from.
Mm.
I have to reactivate it and relearn it. When in truth, there's actually no disconnection or separation when it comes to like this vast potential field of who we are. Rather, it's perceived disconnection. And so once we start to heal the relationship, there's this kind of unification and this integration that happens. And what I love about all of it is it's actually like really simple and we just overcomplicate it,
Right.
and overthink it. So for me now, it is a very kind of intuitive. Sometimes it's sitting down and having an intention or a prayer in my heart of like, this is something I would like to bring through in song and offer and share. And sometimes it's just like sitting down, pressing record, singing. I have no idea. It's just
Mm-hmm.
happening, and that's
Right.
equally as fun. And it's something I'm just doing more and more, like kind of letting go of all of these, like even the story around what is happening, even the
Yeah.
story around like the healing of this, like even that, like just letting go of
Right.
all of it. Like this is something that's happening. And how
Mm-hmm.
beautiful is that? To allow something to happen through you without knowing it, without controlling it, without having to prove it, without having to explain it, and to receive it from that
Yeah.
same place. No story. I mean, this is what this like modality, for lack of a better word, has taught me is like, there is a way to be without the story, to be
Mm.
just with the sensation and the somatic experience and the presence. And it's deeply liberating and creates so much lightness,
Yeah.
there's like such a weight that is lifted, and this kind of expression is not one that wants to be taken seriously. It wants
I
to
love
play,
that. Yeah.
and it can play and be very unserious and also be profoundly healing. But it's most effortlessly met when we just kind of like children,
Yeah.
just let go and just be in it and just decide that it's enough, that whatever it is, whatever's coming through is enough and it's it. And we're there. Nothing more needs to be activated. Nothing more needs to be discovered. It's all there and it's enough as it is, and it's from that place. It's almost like a mind trick that we play on ourselves, right? Because it's
Mm-hmm.
from that place of like complete radical acceptance and presence with what is that then the door to quote unquote more opens.
Right. Wow. It's it's so profound, and I really love the way that you continue to respond to these questions. I keep hearing like it's limitless. We're unlocking, we're deconditioning. So there is no verbal articulation.
Mhm.
It's just our soul having fun, playing, getting to be, which sadly we're not trained to do, and that's why this sounds different to us today, and that's why we have concerts and music with lyrics to connect with. And I wanted to ask about incorporating instruments. I'm curious what happens. Do you feel like a pull to connect with a certain instrument, and kind of like how that connects with whatever's going on somatically in you as you're kind of channeling this?
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like, the instruments that I have, and I'm not like a big instrument person. I'm not like an instrumentalist, so to speak. I have a few instruments that I love, that I use, that are very accessible and easy to use, which also allows me to like also vocalize and channel more freely because I don't have to think about fully what my hands are doing. A crystal bowl is
Mhm.
relatively easy to play compared to, like a guitar or something. And I do play guitar as well, but I like to approach instruments from a very simplistic place. Also, because I love that it kind of can like demystify a little bit, people who are feeling called to music and instruments and expression and have this story that like you need to be a quote unquote real musician. And I just love that like it gives permission to kind of everyone, like grab a crystal bowl, anyone can play a
Yeah.
crystal bowl and it's just there, But with regard to the instruments I have, I really feel like every one of them are like my friends. They
Yeah.
have such a unique essence and spirit to them. And this is also especially true when instruments are created consciously, like really, really intentionally.
Mhm.
I have a beautiful shamanic drum that I got from a incredible shamanic drum birther who lives in Denmark, and his mission is to birth these shamanic drums. And every piece from like, the wood frame to the hide to every like little wooden bolt that goes into the
Mhm.
frame, like everything has a story, has a intention to it. And meeting an instrument that has been cultivated from that profound place of like
Wow. Yeah.
absolute intention, as well as embodied relationship to the spirit of the instrument itself, has been an incredible teacher for me because I mean I really do believe that there's a consciousness to these instruments. And like this drum, for example, has literally mentored me in opening my voice because it's so powerful in its energy and the way it was created. When I play this drum, there is a frequency, there is a field that is opened, and
Yeah.
I'm invited to meet it. And in the beginning, it was a challenge. And this is why this instrument, I feel like, really taught me a lot about what it is to channel. You know, I would use other drums and just sing effortlessly. And then I would pick this one up and I would start to play it. And I would find myself meeting every layer of resistance and fear and
Wow.
distrust and control. So this drum, the name of this drum is the unicorn. This man, like, he receives the name of each spirit of the drum. When I saw this drum for sale, I later that night had a dream of the drum and of a unicorn and knew that I had to have this drum. And the unicorn is about purity. So what this drum has taught me is absolute purity when approaching this instrument, and like the purity of heart that is the unicorn, meaning coming in with the desire to control. I need to sound good. It
Yeah.
needs to be something I like. It needs to affect these people in this way. Coming in with any of these impurities completely closed my channel.
Wow.
And so it was this real practice of like learning how to open and attune my vessel and my voice to the pure hearted frequency that this drum emitted. And still, I have such an amazing relationship with this drum because still when I take time away from her and have months away and then I sit again, it's like, oh, right. I have to like relearn this. I have to reopen to it. So it's a constant like process of growth. And even with the crystal bowls, these are beings, you know, this is a
Yeah.
crystalline kind of consciousness, and they evoke a completely different energy, essentially an invitation for me to co-create with. And what I found with is like for people opening their voice as well, like having an instrument that really resonates is so supportive because it is like a teacher. It opens the space of sound for us, first of all, right? Which it can be difficult if we haven't worked a lot with our voice to just start sounding and almost like, it's almost like, you know, you're wandering to the dark and like, where do I go and what can I bring
Yeah.
through or hold or anchor? And this instrument opens the field of sound and then actually invites you to attune with it. And the nature of the human being and body and vessel is that we attune to sound. And so it's a beautiful way to actually kind of learn and remember how to open our voice in this way. I use the Shruti box a lot when I'm working in person with people vocally. So if we're doing a vocal awakening in person, I'll include the Shruti box. And that is one of the instruments that I found is the most supportive in supporting people in opening their voice and
Ooh.
like really getting a sense of their voice. There is something in its frequency that just opens channels
Oh.
in people. And so this is something I used a lot in the beginning when I was really developing my voice, and I'm always kind of bringing into spaces.
I wonder if, because every time I look at the Shruti box, like it feels like lungs, you're inhaling, exhaling. It feels super natural. Do you think that's why?
I love that you said that because it's so true. You know, it has reeds in it, which means it needs air to be pumped through those reeds, which is so similar
Mm.
to the human body and the vocal folds, right? The vocal folds are these passive membranes. They can't do anything on their own. And it's by cultivating breath in the body that breath moves through the membranes and vibrates them right at a different frequency, creating a different
No
sound. And it's
way.
quite similar
Wow.
to the pumping of the Shruti box, pumping air through the reeds, which then vibrate with, you know, these beautiful tones. And so I love that you brought that
Wow.
up because it's quite true. I think there is something, there's like a holographic reflection there, I think, that really opens things up for people.
Yeah, that makes sense because especially earlier we are talking about mirroring, and then here's an instrument that mirrors our exact kind of frequency and our vocal tone. It's like, oh yeah, I can get a little comfortable. That instrument is doing it, so I can, humans love to mimic and copy, so I can dance with that a bit and then kind of take up more and more space with it. It's cool. I was thinking too, I have a gong at home and I did a gong training and it was extremely intense. And just like you're talking about this shamanic drum, I felt so much in that conversation because I was like, yeah, the gong was speaking to me and I was peeling back layers and layers, and I'd pause, I'd turn, I'd talk to the gong master. We'd basically do like a therapy session, and then I'd go back and I'd get something else from the gong, and I'd keep going and peeling back and back. And it was showing me all these kind of unhealed spaces. And the gong is, a sacred instrument that when you're transmitting that, when you're playing, you can also, bring in your unhealed pieces. So the whole training was about like understanding what's still there and finding ways to let that go. And so then I got a gong, and I spent many months just being so overwhelmed by it, where I'm like, I am not ready for that. I don't know. The instrument spoke to me. It's kind of weird. And of course I'd tell friends, and they're like, what do you mean? Like, because it's loud? I'm like, no, because actually when I play the gong, I'm not striking it like crazy. It's like tapping, and it's light, but it's profound. And only recently in the last couple months, I started playing it with that lens of, this is fun. This is cool. I get to co-create with this instrument, and we get to have a song together. And I also, months prior, when I tried to get into it and still had a lot of resistance, I would sing over it with like lyrical songs. I think it was so uncomfortable to be there with that instrument that my mind needed something like, oh, but it's an Adele song, so it's cool, we're chilling, or it's sad right now, so we're just gonna belt this really sad song. And I see so much in what you're saying with the instruments, and really trusting them and connecting with them like friends. Like, they have a story to tell too.
They're truly teachers, absolutely. And especially when they are created with intentionality, and intention, and also quality materials goes into them, and with gongs are incredibly powerful beings, I would say, honestly. And I think that even this is the mystery, right? Like, there's mystery in all of this. And just who's to even say what is taking place and arising through the gong, for example? Like, who's to say, that there is not, that it does not act as a portal or as a medium for the spirit of something other than the material quality of the gong, And when these instruments are made with intention, their sound and their frequency is so clear and coherent that as it moves through our body, it meets all of those places that are not at that level of clarity and coherence, and it interfaces with them. And that interfacing can often feel like little triggers coming up, or, and if we're aware and receptive, then we are able to see and receive that, like you did with your gong experience. You were able to notice all of these emotions and experiences it was bringing up in you. And for those who might not be as receptive, we might experience it as, oh, I'm not interested in this. This is boring. Or it's not really my thing, and I'm going to walk away. Like, we have so many ways to respond to that kind of the button being pushed, so to speak.
The trigger,
but it really is this, it begins to invite us into coherence. It begins to invite us to meet it where it is. And it lovingly points out those spaces within ourselves that are not there. And one thing that I feel is really important to speak to, because I think it can often be misunderstood when we talk about sound healing, and especially sound healing has become very trendy. And I think like all things that become trendy, there can be this like more superficial version of it that manifests in our collective and that a lot of people kind of tune into and subscribe to. But I feel like it's really important to speak to when these instruments or these sounds, right? The force that is sound healing is moving through our body, through our being, through our whole somatic experience. When it's finding these spaces that are not in resonance, right? That are not in coherence, there's this kind of mythology that like the sound then like clears and like heals and like gets you rid of those spaces. And it can create this story of like, I am not coherent enough. I have these low vibrations, these densities, these energies that are like weighing me down, right? And I
Mm-hmm.
use the sound healing to like up level and improve and upgrade and this and the frequencies of healing sound find those spaces of density and darkness and low vibe and it either like clears it, heals it, gets rid of it, like releases it from the body. And now we're like cleared and healed and purified. What it cultivates is actually, in my personal opinion, it cultivates this, I guess, this kind of coming out of right relationship with our body, with our experience,
Mm-hmm.
right? It starts to orient us to all of these aspects that are still, let's just say, unintegrated, simply enough,
Yeah.
as something that needs to be found, like discovered, and then like extinguished. And that is not the nature of vibration and sound. There is a nature of relationship that often goes kind of unnoticed, right? Because if I'm just trying to approach this lack of resonance or coherence in my body with this idea of needing to clear it because it's like
Yeah.
affecting me negatively and I need to get rid of it, there's no way for me to be in relationship with it, right? Because I'm
Right.
bringing in an external standard of what I think is superior and better. And I'm now inflicting it on that aspect of myself. And there's no way for me to listen to that part of me, to come into a relationship with that part of me, to understand that part of me. And I would say like it becomes very difficult to genuinely integrate it. And what
Mm-hmm.
sound I feel has taught me is like it just invites you into those spaces that are not incoherent and it invites you to get to know them and to come into relationship with them. And through that relationship, ultimately, we understand that like there's always a story. And very often there's wounding. And very often there's a charge or an experience that is simply unresolved. And
Mm.
sound and vibration can allow us to resolve. And through that resolution, through that loving, all accepting resolution, we integrate. And integration does not involve rejecting aspects of ourselves or getting rid of low vibrational parts of ourselves that don't make the cut, you know? And
Yeah.
that is one of the main lessons I have received from sound is love. The
Oh,
love that is required, because love is a frequency. If I'm working with a beautiful, healing, powerful instrument that is bringing, you know, beautiful frequencies into my body, but I'm caught up in how I need to get rid of those lower frequencies, I'm actually contradicting the pure nature
mm.
of the vibration of that instrument or sound that is being offered to me by my vibration of it's not good enough, right?
Yeah.
So I'm actually like undermining that moment. When we can drop into love, absolute acceptance, absolute trust in all that is arising, that is a frequency that truly comes into coherence and resonance with the healing nature of sound. And that is where like actual integration and then embodiment organically kind of arises.
I am so grateful for that because I totally hear what you're saying and I feel it too and I see it too. Sound healing is a really great tool and a really amazing space for someone to hold for others, like this container. And you're right. I think in modern day society, day to day, we want the quick fixes and it's this natural gravitation like, oh, this is going to heal me. This is going to change me. This person, by playing the singing bowls, is going to do the work for me. All I have to do is lie here and receive. And it's just that change in mindset that puts the power back in us to be like, this space can create safety for me to explore what comes up. This is a space for me to connect with myself and utilize those frequencies and the instruments and this container as a healing opportunity,
Yeah, an invitation.
an
It's just an
invitation.
invitation that we are invited to meet, no matter how passive or receptive we are in the moment of receiving, you know, a healing or sound healing. It's a co-creation and always has been and always will be.
I love that. I love that. And thank you for that reminder that we have all the power within us. It's all within us. It's always within us to heal. Just speaking of all of this, what I've found to be so enjoyable is to be so present with whoever I'm interviewing. And all of this is just also making me feel so good of this like limitlessness. Like in a lot of ways, like it's a podcast, it's a conversation that people can listen to on their drive, on their walks, but it also has so much potential to connect with different people in different ways. And one aspect of the conversation that I'm drawn to is going to be a different aspect that someone else listens to. And so just going about the world with this childlike curiosity and exploration is liberating on its own.
I love the way you are speaking to this because, for me, I've noticed the way that I come into relationship with my voice has affected every aspect of my expression, right? Because voice is expression. And so the way that you're speaking to, how you are orienting to your podcast, which is a form of your current expression, is actually reflecting like everything that we're speaking to, right? This piece of like, I can't control ultimately the outcome of this. I can't control how every single person perceives this because every single person will be met where they are, and I can't control the outcome by setting up a specific structure. I can drop into intention and like the prayer of that intention. And then I can just be with what is, and the beauty of like deepening into our voice in this way is it starts to affect every other aspect of our expression in life. Every space where we transmit ourselves out, the internal out into the external, right? Into the world around us and are met. Every space like that in our lives, I feel personally gets touched and influenced by dropping into this kind of vocal work or just work with sound in general, and so I just love the reflection here, right? In how you are grounding and orienting to your expression in this moment in a way that is actually just another kind of holographic mirror of what we're speaking to.
Right, totally. And I'm tripping over like light language and now I'm using words, but it's this expression to me is so exciting and we're having a whole conversation. We're meeting now in this space and our voices are so powerful. There's so much there. It's when we're present and speaking or singing, it feels like this spirit beyond the day to day. It's something so profound. And I experience it in these sessions where I'm just like, whoa, I didn't know where this was going. I had no expectation. I'm open to receive. And here we are. And it's this crazy cool journey of tapping in different instruments, seeing them as beings. That's so beautiful. I've never considered that. And now I feel this openness towards all the instruments I have.
Yeah. And what that brings up for me is like, speaking to like a moment such as this, right? We're speaking to each other. We're using our beautiful linear English language, right? But we're talking about a form of expression that is beyond linear language. And just what's coming up for me as you're saying that is, in the beginning of my journey, I saw and perceived these expressions as different, right? The nonlinear intuitive expression of light language and then the like intellectual, language that is English or any of our earth languages. And over time, what I have learned in just mentoring with these codes and this expression is we are able to begin to integrate and unify those expressions. So in this moment where we are speaking to each other in our English language and it's making intellectual sense, others can receive it and understand it. Also woven within the fabric that is our voice and our words, but specifically the way our voice holds our words is what we call light language, right? They are not separate in the same way our human experience is not separate from the divine experience. For me, I just discovered more and more that by working with this intuitive expression, it's integrated that portal, that space within my voice in a way that when I am speaking in a way that is not light language, that is not intuitive, flow, that is very intellectual and making sense, the presence of those codes and that texture of experience is actually available. And this kind of, the feminine expression that is intuitive song, for example, and the masculine expression that is our intellectual language begin to kind of come together and unify, and we realize like every one of us has these experiences. I mean, think of any time you are in flow, you're speaking to
Yeah.
someone and suddenly it's like something opens up and you're listening to your own voice and you're listening to your thoughts that are coming through, but you're also experiencing something else, something that is woven into all of it, something that feels like magic, that feels like download, that feels like a message. You've noticed it when you've received words from others where like you're listening to what they're saying, but you know that your body is like receiving a deeper transmission, you know, and that
Mhm.
is like when we are able to unify that masculine and feminine expression, unify the nonlinear language with the linear language. It's something we do all the time, but it's also something that as we integrate this exploration, this form of expression, we begin to be able to just embody it more and more. And it also heals, I think, this wound of separation that is scattered throughout so many aspects of ourselves, you know? I
Yeah.
can sit here and I can speak in English and use my intellectual mind, but I don't have to like be trapped in that, you know, which used to be like a wound for me, you know, as like a
Mhm.
sensitive, hyper imaginative, you know, little girl who was always like too out there for everyone and didn't make sense. And, you know, I had this wound around always having to make sense. And this is something I think a lot of us hold, especially a lot of women, like having
Mhm.
to make sense and don't be too emotional and too out there and too intuitive that you miss everyone. And so that wound of having to always make sense and having to always compress all of these infinite emotional experiences into something that like someone can understand, it created like some pain in me because it was like,
Yeah.
I know there's a way that I can express myself that like actually allows me to fully transmit what I'm feeling, that allows me to be felt and seen and received in a way that is really true. And light language offered that to me. Intuitive expression offered that to me. But now what I'm learning is like, that's always available to me no matter how I choose to express myself because it is a texture of experience. It is not what is done. It is not what we say. It is the texture in which we orient to our voice, to our expression, the texture in which we orient to like the transmission that is always alive in us and how we actually, how deeply we're able to like give ourselves to it essentially.
Wow. I'm curious too. What's coming up for me is thinking of that flow state and how I have friends who collage or do ceramics and they're deeply in a flow state. I've tried ceramics and it's very hard for me to feel meditative in that moment. Very, very hard. And so I gravitate towards sound. I love singing. I love instruments. Sound healing is a very easy space for me to feel connected in that flow state. I'm curious how we can connect with those intuitive spaces and bring that into our day to day. For example, when you are doing a transmission, yeah. I was like, what's the word? I'm losing my English now. But when you're in the middle of that flow and then you're done with your song and you get back up and you make a cup of tea and you start talking to people, what is that kind of connection that you're carrying forward?
I love that question. It's something that over time in my practice, I became more and more aware of. Because in the beginning, there was still a schism, so to speak, of, you know, dropping into the intuitive channeling space, having that experience, and then like going back to like, you know, that kind of opposite experience of like, oh no, I'm just a human and I'm doing mundane things. And over time, I became aware of like that separation, which essentially just like a lack of integration between those two experiences, and got curious about how to weave, you know, that experience of flow and channeling, which for me, like it just feels like home, just feels like being more me. So I got
Mhm.
curious about like how to weave that in, and I started to realize that, you know, we create so many narratives and constructs around everything, which is obviously helpful and beautiful, but it also equally can sometimes just like trap us, you know, because
Yeah.
we just get stuck in that place. You know, in the beginning for me, it was like learning to channel as if that's an experience that like I'm not already having. And then
Same
after
here.
a
Yeah.
while, I was like, hold on a second. It's all the same thing all the time, right?
Hmm.
It's actually healing our perception right?
Mm.
What we're able to perceive, and beginning to weave those threads of perception back together. Because aren't we always channeling? Like, where do your thoughts come from? Where does your voice come
Yeah.
from? Like, where? Really? You know? And that's just like, for me, it's like one of these like Zen koans of just like, where does my voice come from? Where do my thoughts come from? It's just like dropping into that and just realizing like it's all still a story. You know, I would say even that when we're speaking with our intellectual mind and we're even having conversations about the most mundane things,
Mhm.
there is still there is still a receiving of something within, which is just a truth, like what is alive, and then an interpreting of that into an expression. I would say, with regard to your question of like what that looks like to then integrate it, in the beginning, I thought it was, how do I learn how to be like channeling and holding flow in my day to day? And what I discovered it was, is actually, how do I learn how to always speak and express from what is true and what is a lie? Because that's the channel.
Mm.
The channel is what is. And what is what is. There's no, like, you
Wow.
can't discuss, it's not open for discussion, you
Yeah.
know? So I used to think it was like, I just have to like bring this energy and this kind of way of being into mundane life. In other words, I was actually trying to erase the mundane experiences of my life because I didn't want to
Right.
be in them. And then
Mm.
I recognized that it's actually just learning how to be deeply aware of what is actually true and alive and speak from that place. You know, and in that way, I can
Mhm.
speak to the most mundane, earthly, human things. But if it's coming from that place that is like, it's alive and it's true for me for whatever reason, then then it is for me like a flow or like a channel, you know?
Yeah. Wow. No, I love that. And it got me curious when you're guiding others, whether that's in a group or one-on-one, where do you start? How do you kind of build that trust or relationship to kind of go beyond what we think, or oh our lives are so mundane, or I only know if I learn from someone? How do you kind of help guide people out of that thinking?
Yeah, I think I always, begin with just offering my own perspective to all of this. You know, the things that I've just shared with you now, I
Yeah.
speak to a lot, just to open a space for people to, because we're not trying to banish the mind. We're not trying to leave the mind out of this. Our mind
Hmm.
wants to be a part of it and like deserves to be informed, you know, in a way that like allows the mind to serve the experience and not hijack the experience. So I love to just talk about all of this and I love to offer my truth on all of it. And I also believe that like when we're really rooted in our truth and it's not just something we're saying, but it's something we feel and know, I think that people are able to receive that in a way similar to the way the instrument offers a field that invites you into it. I think when we are speaking from our truth and we feel it and we are holding that in an embodied kind of expression, that also offers a field that invites others to that space,
Mm.
right? So just by like speaking in a way that is conscious and also opening up conversation, we can like kind of invite others into the field of experience that we are offering. And everyone will find their own place within that field, a place that is actually true for them. But when it comes to actually then opening the voice and dropping into that space, it's actually so simple that it's like complicated.
Yeah.
Because there's actually no roadmap. There's no set of instructions or direction. It's actually just your body and your somatic experience is always giving you the next step. It's always giving you what is. It literally cannot do anything other than that. That's why the somatic experience in our body is like one of the greatest resources we have available to us. Because if we just sit within ourselves, making sound, and I always invite everyone in the beginning, just make sound. Don't think about it. That's how we always start. Just make sound. I don't care what it is. I don't care if you hum. I don't care if you scream. Whatever sound feels most accessible and effortless and available to you. It can be the quietest little monotone baby hum imaginable. I don't care. Make sound. Just invite vibration into the body. Because when we invite vibration into the body, vibration does what it does, which is a mystery, right? It moves through the body and it begins to immediately open everything that is alive within us. We don't have to go outside of ourselves. I never try to teach someone how to do something. All I want to do is create a space for them to drop into what their body is inviting from them and their voice and their vibration is inviting from them. And all we really have to do that is just listen and actually, and this is the hard part, manage to be in presence with it enough that we can drop in. And then a tool that I always love to use, like a little cue or a perspective, is whatever you feel, invite into your voice. I don't care what it is. If you're I don't feel this, it's weird. Okay, invite that into your voice. And don't think about it. Feel that feeling as much as you can, allow it all the way in, and connect to the sound of your voice and just imagine that feeling is moving through you. If you feel frustrated, I can't do this, I'm blocked, fantastic. Bring it into your voice. What does that frustration sound like? So from that perspective, you can't do this wrong. From that perspective, there's no such thing as a block. There's no such thing as I'm blocked. Can you teach me how to be unblocked? No, go to the block.
Yeah.
The block is a
part of it.
Right. Because behind that block is what you are quote unquote looking for. Right. But you don't get to that thing by going around the block or finding some technique or tool to activate it. You have to get into a relationship with the block. That block is your greatest teacher. Get to know it. Listen to it. What does it say? Let it speak through you. And at no point do you have to understand what you're feeling. At no point do you have to be able to define, I'm feeling this emotion. It's not necessary, right? Because there are so many feelings that arise that we can't necessarily know or place. They're just an experience. And we can go through this whole process without understanding it. And it still works immaculately. Understanding is not needed.
Yeah. Yeah, that's not part of the somatic experience. It's just touching on the feelings and just expressing them. I want to ask you where people can connect with you and find you. But first, I want to ask if there's anything else you'd like to share with whoever's listening, kind of as we ease out of our conversation.
I would just encourage anyone listening to spend a little bit more time listening to your own voice, whether it is when you're speaking. And when I say listening to your voice, I'm not talking about what you're saying, I'm talking about the actual tone and sound and texture. It can be as simple as just letting yourself hum the same note for 5 minutes and just being there in it. Our voice is the sonic manifestation of who we are here as humans. Even for those who might have a lot of restriction and contraction and shadow around their voice, so those who might still not feel that they're able to express a lot of themselves, within any sound that you make lies the holographic, full expression of your entire vocal vibrational spectrum. And just because the bandwidth available to us might be limited and we're still working on opening that up, it doesn't mean that that full spectrum is not alive and moving through you at every moment. We don't get to just say oh, my voice is blocked, and so I'm not expressing in that way. Your whole being is expressing the vibrational truth of what you are at every moment, whether you like it or not. And we're just learning to kind of create space and capacity within ourselves to really consciously hold and express it. But I kind of relate it to we can understand as our vocal vibrational spectrum is consciousness, right? It just is.
Okay. Yeah.
It just is. Your vocal vibrational spectrum, everything that you are in your vocal expression, it just is consciousness. And then our bandwidth is kind of the awareness of it. Consciousness doesn't expand, but our awareness of consciousness expands. And as our awareness of consciousness expands, we're able to hold more of that consciousness within us. So as our bandwidth, right, our vocal vibrational bandwidth expands, deepens, enriches, we're able to hold more of our spectrum. But that doesn't mean that that spectrum is not completely present and intact and imprinted and woven into every part of you. it's there. It's like the paradox of it's there, but it's not there. By acknowledging how present and alive it is, that we actually open the door to receiving it more deeply.
Wow, I appreciate that because there's vocal teachers and people that help you reach different ranges, or there's choirs and people are in different vocal ranges. So just that awareness that we're the full spectrum of our voices at any given moment. It's just our awareness of that consciousness that can expand and that can give us access to it. I think that's really beautiful. And relating back to it's all within us. It's always there. It's not a teacher that's going to grant us the right kind of vocal toning to get there. It's just the inner work. It's the connection. It's building that relationship with your voice, with your frequency, with sound that brings you deeper and deeper. Super cool. Super cool. And I love all the moments I lose my voice, I forget my English. I think it's all part of it. It's all part of it.
And to see all of that as a sacred part of the whole transmission, because we're so programmed to always perceive flaw and mistake. And a really big misunderstanding that we have around vocal embodiment and vocal mastery is we correlate it to perfection. And this is like one of these really big pieces that can arise as a quote unquote block. Because ultimately what I understand is vocal liberation and vocal embodiment is having your full spectrum available to you, being willing to engage with and express the full spectrum, even when it does not meet the standard of perfection or beauty or whatever constructs of superiority we have. So it's the moment of losing your voice. It's the moment where your voice breaks. It's the moment where you fumble over your words, where you go on some incoherent rant because there's just something coming up that you're trying to speak to. It's that moment where your voice falters. It's the moment where things get messy and strange, weird. Like that is a part of true vocal embodiment. And many of us can get into this false expression of vocal mastery where we get so good at performing and being so regulated and controlled in how we present that the idea of falling into those other forms of expression are seen as inferior or flaws or mistakes. And that is it's kind of like the opposite. Right? Like it is that individual who is able to comfortably be in everything that's coming up through them and express it that gives another individual permission to oh, wow, I can be there. My personal shadow with this is this piece of wanting to come across in a way that is coherent because I hold spaces. I want to make sense for people. Oh my God, imagine I'm holding space for people and no one understands what I'm but even allowing for that and dropping into this trust of what if what I'm saying doesn't make any sense and I'm stumbling over my words and I'm trying to find thread and yet in that moment something is moving through my voice and my energy and my field that is transmitting the very essence. And it's remembering that I don't know.
Wow.
I don't I'm not entitled to know or to control the outcome of this. It's the deepest expression of surrender and faith and trust in myself and in anyone who's a part of the experience.
I love that. I love what you just said on surrender because I feel that too. There was no embarrassment over my cough or earlier, what's the word I'm looking for? And it's, I keep looping it back to because I'm so present and because this is such an intentional conversation that I've let go of, oh my God, I need a moment to go cough and, create discomfort. And now, oh, she's waiting for me to say something. I don't even go there because I'm just experiencing it and just maybe shining a light on it for a second and working through it. And then I'm back.
To hide aspects of what is to create a deeply imbalanced, co-created reality, which is what we see a lot in the world around us. But you hide what is, and it comes out usually in a much more destructive, imbalanced form, So it is a deep faith. Can I hold all of it? Can I find safety in all of it? Can I find comfort in all of it?
Yeah. Yeah. And just like you said too, I feel like the language you're using is so it's so soft, like it's imbalance. It's not, oh, hiding something. Like, the language that you're choosing is not this aggressive, it's not this judgmental towards how we show up in the world. It's just a matter of like, what lever are we pulling heavier, or like what are we trying to get? And it's not yeah, just I hear so deeply, like there's no judgment, just awareness.
I always think of Ram Dass, and I don't know if you're familiar with Ram Dass, but like
Mhm.
his he'll always just say this in his lectures of just like, also, also. Like, okay, that's happening. Also, you know, this thing is arising. Oh, I don't like it. It's so, oh, also. Like, oh, I stepped into this really manipulative, controlling part of me and I expressed it and, oh, I have to heal it and integrate it and it's so bad. I was like, also.
Yeah.
Okay, and this is
Hmm.
creation. It's just happening. It's just
Yeah.
happening. Can we just be with what is happening and just kind of, okay, so.
So especially just, being in healing spaces and with this mission of like weaving spirituality in our human experience. Yeah, there's so much pressure on, oh, I need to know all my quote unquote baggage. I need to know all my trauma. I need to go and heal it. I need to just push through. I love that. So give yourself some grace. So now I'll ask you, where can we find you? Where do we connect? How do we hear these transmissions and work with you?
So I have a YouTube channel that's called Kumi, Qumi. And that's where I share my transmissions, my songs, and just really anything that I'm feeling called to express. I have an Instagram, Talitha Ferri, my name. And I share a lot of different things on there. And then I have, of course, my website, kumicodes.com. And then I've also just opened a mystery school, the Earth Oracle Mystery School.
Oh, super cool.
Yeah, just a couple weeks ago. And this is a mystery school that is in service to an exploration and celebration of earth, sound, and feminine principles. So this is really where like my passions on my path like kind of all converge, into one
Hmm.
expression. And yeah, I'm co-creating a beautiful odyssey with a sister through that mystery school called the Oracular Earthkeeper.
Wow.
So anchoring my deep love for earth keeping and my relationship with earth and the spirits of earth also into vocal experience and what it is to be the oracular earth keeper, to be a voice for the spirit of earth, to allow the voice of earth and her spirits to move through us and really like reweave, remend, reimagine, revitalize this bridge between humanity and earth that has, in many ways been severed and we've lost a lot of integration. So yeah, that's opening at the end of April and I'm super excited about that.
Wow, that's super cool. Is that online? Is that
Mhm.
like a
Yeah.
wow?
So the Oracle Mystery School is an online mystery school, and this first container, which is a 2-month container, is all online.
Super cool. So and that's on your website.
That's the Earth Oracle website.
Oh,
So
okay,
there's
Earth Oracle website.
so that's its own mystery school, Earth Oracle mysteryschool.com, and then kumicodes.com. And that Kumi Codes is like my kind of my little personal things that I'm doing, my sessions and things like that.
Wow. Well, I'm super excited for you. That sounds incredible. And whomever's listening and whoever signs up, that is going to be such an experience, that connection to earth and spirit and voice. Wow, I got to look into that. And thank you again so much for this conversation and for really, I feel like, we mentioned this about the downloads and conversation. I'm like, yep. I received a lot. I can't wait to re-listen and just re-experience. And I'm really grateful for you and all the work that you're doing.
Thank you, Molly. Thank you for having me. Thank you for receiving me and like meeting me and, co-leading this conversation. And
Oh,
I really appreciate it. And I really see also and honor the ways that you are, embodying the themes and threads of this conversation and your own expression here with this podcast.
Thank you so much. That was the sweetest shout out I feel like I've received in a while. So thank you, thank you. I love it. My soul is dancing. Yeah, thank you. Well, I'll talk to you soon, and thank you so much again.
Thank you.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye.